Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Game Changers podcast. I am your host, Baron McQueen, and you know how we do each and every week, talking to people that's changing the game every day in business, music, community, and more. And today's guest, she actually checks more than just the business box. I'm gonna ask her about her music as
Okay.
well. I have Tina Karras in the building. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm amazing. So for y'all that don't know, I've already tried Tina's vodka. Some of the smoothest. I'm not a vodka drinker because it just gives me that rubbing alcohol. If I drink it, it got to be mixed with something. So give me some cranberry juice, some pineapple juice, or something. But we was just doing shots of this, and it was so smooth that everybody was like, "Yo!" And after the second shot, it tastes even better. You can really, and I'm just like, "Y'all just getting drunk, right?" So, how do you get into this space of spirits?
Well, thank you so much for your kind words on my vodkas. I agree with you. I think vodka has always been kind of treated as, oh, whatever, it's just vodka. You're going to mix it with something. So who cares what the
Right.
quality is? But your body cares later. You feel it. You pay for it later when it's, like you said, if it feels like rubbing alcohol. So, I'm a musician. I moved to LA from North Carolina many years ago. And just to pay rent and live my life. I was bartending and waitressing. I grew up in a family-owned restaurant, and just through the course of my life, I ended up being the buyer for spirits at the Roxy Theater in West Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah, so I learned a lot there, just kind of as I went, and just learned about how to, set up the bar, do it efficiently for a music venue because it's very different than a restaurant.
Of course.
And then we started setting up partnerships, sponsorships, and then I started working for a major concessionaire. And since we are such big buyers, I'm pitched on everything. We're constantly wanting
Mm.
tastings, wine tastings, education. And I will tell you this, the liquor industry is very full of a bunch of artists. There's a lot
Really?
of pride and yeah, it's like a recipe. There's a lot of craftsmanship going into
Right.
making wine and spirits that most people don't know.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
wouldn't know unless I worked in the business. Yeah. So, but one thing I noticed was there really wasn't a good domestic vodka that was non-GMO, organic, gluten-free, that
Mm.
actually tasted good, like you're saying. Like
Right.
I've had organic, non-GMO vodkas, but they were awful.
Got
And
it.
so I saw there was a void, and I'm like, hey, maybe I should fill that void and come up with my own vodka with all my experience and my palate and things I've seen. So that was the creation of Tina's vodka. And
How do you get into the process of like how do you determine what am what's the gonna be the base of my vodka, right? Like some people
yeah,
do weed and corn and grapes, and so talk to me a little bit about that process.
well, like we were saying, I'm from the South. I'm from North Carolina. I grew up eating grits, eating organic
Oh,
corn. I love grits. Best.
oh man,
Butter and salt. That's all you need.
nice. No sugar, correct?
No sugar, yeah. And no
Thank you.
cheese. I'm
And
not
no
even
cheese.
yeah.
My wife needs to see this episode. She like sugar does go on grits, and you can add cheese and salt, pepper, maybe
No.
a little butter, and keep it moving, right?
Have some bacon and eggs go with it. It's a party. Yeah. That's what I grew up eating. So I've
Nice.
always had that. And the thing is, corn wasn't always full of GMOs and pesticides. We were,
Mm,
I'm probably older than you. I'm Gen X, but we grew up eating corn. There was no need to call it no non-GMO
right,
or organic because it was just came from the earth.
right,
So I wanted to also, that's part of the reason why I chose that. And corn does give a different taste. Like you were saying, the aftertaste, how it felt better, cleaner. There's a natural sweetness that organic
right.
corn has, where
Mm,
wheat has a smell. It
right,
can,
right, right.
a lot of people who are non-GMO, I mean gluten-free, they still avoid wheat vodkas. So
Really?
even though there's no way the gluten can survive the distillation process, people say just because the essence of it, it could be, psychological, but they don't want to drink it because of the
Right.
gluten. So that's how we came up with corn. And then the guys I'm working with worked really hard to find me good quality non-GMO organic corn
Right.
to start at the base.
Now, what's that? So you talk about distillation. So for my audience, they don't know this space. I'm a little bit privy to some of this information about the distillation, but talk to me about what is that process and how many times is good versus how many times is bad or not enough.
Well, there's actually a lot of different theories on how many times to distill something. And a
Hmm.
lot of it is just marketing. Oh, it's distilled 20 times, 10 times, 5 times. And then
Oh,
there's,
so it's just a term.
yeah, well, I mean, they actually do that, but it doesn't necessarily affect the vodka the way you would think it does.
Got it.
It, it doesn't necessarily mean it's cleaner or pure or better. All the processors is just the way they're selling it to you. And
Mm,
what my distillery does is since we're using a unique corn each time, it's not GMO where it's always the same exact corn. It's kind of like wine in a way where the grapes, you
right.
got to look at the chemistry. And so we distill it as many times as necessary. It can
Mm,
be up to six, it could be three, or I've heard people say it could just be one time is all that's needed. Because what
interesting.
you do after the fact, after you distill it, then you filter out the impurities and things like that.
Wow.
But but some places and why there's a different price in vodka, they don't filter it at all. Everything's left in there. So that's when
Mm.
the hangover or you feel or you taste it or it's got the bite.
So that's that rail version of vodka when you go to the free open bar and ask for a vodka and they give you that one they grabbed from the bottom shelf and you like, oh my gosh, one cranberry and vodka, my head is pounding. So
That's
that's the rail version.
yes,
Ah,
exactly. So it's like it's just the cheapest way. You're getting what you pay for.
yeah.
Um, and so with my vodka, we actually took it a step further. We distill it, and then we do this very unique proprietary filtration through organic coconut shells. And
Really?
there's more to it, yeah. And then we filter out every impurity. It's like
Wow.
medicinally grade clean. So that's why,
Mm,
like when you were tasting it, it's so smooth
so
and how
smooth.
you felt afterward because any impurity gone.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so how do you go from, you know what, I'm gonna do this vodka thing? What's that process timeline wise to like me actually getting a bottle shipped?
Well, we were trying to make festival season of 2020
Oh
in
wow.
January. And so obviously that didn't happen.
Of course.
Everything that I never thought I'd be launching a company during a global pandemic.
Right, right.
Um, so typically, every process is different. I started the process with these guys, and the TTB is the first line. You have to get your label approved through them. Typically, that takes
Mm,
2 weeks. During
got
the
it.
pandemic, it took 5 months.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah. And so from there, then the process is easy because everything I'm doing is domestic. And
Right.
that was one thing, that was another component. I wanted it to be American made and give back to our American farmers
Wow,
and
that's
back
so
to, yeah, yeah. Cause it's like everything's outsourced. Like, why can't we make anything here?
nice. Does that affect the cost or no? That's like didn't affect the cost of how you price point being locally, or does it?
Well, the price point was more affected by the non-GMO organic corn because
Ah,
it's over 3 times as expensive as the regular corn, or I
got
guess the GMO corn, I should say. It
it.
shouldn't be regular.
Yeah, the Chipotle corn that they serve at Chipotle, right? Nah, this is interesting to me. Talk so like a lot of people that I know that are in the, let's say, the music space,
Mhm.
they've never shifted. Like this is a shift though, right? Are you still active musically, or this is your focus now?
Well, it's both. I'm always going to be a musician no matter what. That's my passion. I always am writing.
Okay,
And so, been working full time and I finally found the right producer to work with. I spent 2.5 years recording the record on my own in
nice.
between, my day job. And we literally went to mastering the record as the world shut down.
Oh my goodness.
So I go from working full time, finishing my record, to being unemployed,
Oh
not
my
knowing where
goodness.
we're going to live or die. Because there's a lot of fear at the beginning. Like we're
Of
now
course.
past that. But they terrified everyone. So, I kind of slowed down the mastering process because I just spent, almost 3 years of my life
Yeah.
finishing this record. I didn't want to mess it up at the end with all this stress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So our new plan was to launch the vodka and the music at the same time. So
That's
it's
a
kind of,
nice marketing campaign.
yeah,
I,
because
I,
with the music space, people don't buy music anymore. It's
yeah,
very rare to download it. It's streaming, which that is, with it's a fraction of a penny for each stream. So,
literally
financially,
pennies,
yeah,
like 0.003 of a penny, right?
seriously, I don't know if it's even that high.
So bad, man. It's funny. I got my first record deal. I was maybe 18. I'm 37 now.
Wow.
And when people tell me they want to get involved in the music industry. I'm just like, why? And what else you got going on that you should focus on before doing music? Because it's literally the business aspect of it that I think people don't get. And I know so many talented people that they're just talented and creative, but they hoard their music, right? They don't put it out. It's like they're babies. And it's like all my friends that's talented musicians, I see people moving faster in the industry that have less talent just because they figured out how to work social media, or you know what I mean, built a fan base up online, and they literally are just studio artists. You can't catch them playing a show. It's the
Mm.
weirdest. Music is in a weird space for me. Like, so I'm always, when I get to hear new talent, I'm like, oh, I want to keep them to myself and don't want to share it with nobody, because then when they get too big, I can't talk to them no more. But this
Did
is
you listen
just,
to my did you listen to
I
my record or
haven't even didn't even get the record. I was so excited she was sending me this vodka to taste. So I'm definitely gonna have to give you some feedback after I hear this
Sure.
album, because I would love. That's me. I'm a music guy. As much as I try to get away from the music industry, I just slowly always find my way. If it not as the artist, but maybe more like executive, or doing some PR or some campaigns for some artists. So I'm always, I like the behind the scenes aspect though. It's a lot less pressure to,
Nice. That's awesome.
to be the face. So how do you balance doing
That's
doing this and
that's
trying
a
and
great
do music,
question.
right?
Yeah, that's a question I ask myself every day. And I think that's, like we were saying, it always pulls you back in, like, because when you have a passion for it. And I think that's another thing with music. It's for everyone all the time, no matter your age, your culture, anything. Music is part of who we are, the vibrations, the energy. I'm a lyricist first and foremost. I love writing. I've written a few screenplays and all of that. Because I feel, the power of music is so strong, like how you're just
Yes.
walking around with lyrics in your head. You don't even remember where you picked them up. And I think there's a lot of, subconscious programming that can happen with that. So I have a ton of music. I've chose 12 songs that I wanted to share with people that were purposely where I'm in a good place. Like I would like, and of course I have no control over that, but to leave you in a more optimistic place after you listen to my music, where I talk about the universe, I talk about energy, um, how you create your life. One song I actually wrote, so I actually went to mastering with 11 songs. And then during the pandemic, I wrote the song called The Magical Ones.
Hmm.
And it was kind of a reaction to everything going on in the world, where they kept telling us we're weak. You got to
Right.
hide. This thing's going to come and get you.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, no, we're powerful beings. And remind ourselves of that, that we have
100%.
we have energy consciousness within us. Just tap into that power. And that's what that song is about. So I added a 12th song a
Nice.
year into the pandemic, and now it's on social media. It's all on all the digital platforms. I just haven't really began pushing it yet because we're still just getting into the market with the vodka. The
Right.
world is still upside down.
Yeah, 100%. So tell me, where is what's the next step though for Tina's Vodka? We gonna see this stores? Is it gonna be in our local BJ's liquor store where we can look for this at, or is it directly to consumer?
Well, right now, most people don't know this because I wouldn't know this either, but we're still dealing with prohibition. Almost
Mm,
100 years later, a lot of the laws have not changed since then. You have to individually go in and open each state, and each state has their own way of their own ABC and how they handle liquor.
wow.
So one good thing with e-commerce and the internet, there are ways you can order it online to other states. Like I just opened with Greekazon. It's like Amazon, but Greekazon, because
Greek
I'm
is
full
on.
blooded Greek. So I
Oh,
was
dope. I didn't know that. Okay.
yes, I got connected with other Greeks. Like my dad's from Sparta, my mom's family's from Patmos.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Nice.
So there's a lot of Greek symbolism on my bottle. Actually, the owl is Athena's owl.
I did not know that. I'm seeing that now as you speak.
Yeah, and
Can I
so it's
show?
about
Can they
the
see that?
female ownership. Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, so it's about the female ownership, the Greek history, and it's also about Earth's wisdom with the owl sitting on top of the tree shaped like an earth, because it's all
Mm.
about
Oh,
getting
I
in
see the
alignment with,
circle.
yes, getting in alignment with the planet. We can give back to the planet. We can cooperate with the planet, and actually have the alpha and omega in the grass on the label that is symbolic for the
I
C
see
sharp.
that. The A
Yes.
and the, oh my goodness, look at
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yes.
not paying attention to the symbolism at all, but I'm glad you're giving me some perspective. I'm gonna have to put this label up when we drop this interview so they can get
Yeah,
these
for
symbols
sure.
that's in there. But so that's the attention to detail that you really put into the branding of the product. I see. So
Yes.
that's
And so I
really dope.
really wanted, yes. And that's the same thing with my music. There's multiple layers of symbolism, like with the key I go to, or the way I arpeggiate something, and all of it means something, and that's my joy is
Nice.
creating a vodka with all these layers, creating music with all these layers. And I feel like us as humans, that's what we do everywhere. You can be
Yeah.
creative in any field you're in, like even like you're saying in the back of the behind the scenes with music, you can be
Yeah.
extraordinarily creative there.
Yeah. What's
So
the
that
what's the I see you have a how can I say this? You big on female empowerment. Talk to me about that.
yes, well, it's finally working in my favor to be a woman.
Got it.
In business, because it's I will tell you, the liquor industry is very dominated by men too.
I believe it.
Yeah, and
100%.
so yeah, so being a woman and moving forward, and I grew up in a family of sisters, so it was never really a thing for me. But I can
Mm.
tell when someone's treating me like I'm a person, when they're treating me like a girl.
Mm.
There's a different tone, and so I would like to, and not even just for women, but anyone. All these day jobs I had, working in a restaurant, working, doing things I didn't think were connected to my music at all of it was preparing me for this that I had
Mm.
no idea was on the horizon. So I think my story about, coming here, paying rent with doing random jobs in the music and in the bar industry prepared me for something. And whatever artist is out there or who's, in a job they don't particularly like, what skills are you picking up right now that you're going to use for yourself in the future? And so I think my story is inspirational that way because now I'm like, oh, now my life makes sense. Okay, I
Yeah.
get it.
I was going to ask you what's a piece of advice you can leave us with, but you just kind of gave me a little glimpse of that. For somebody that's like, look, I want to start my own vodka, but I don't know where to start, or I want to get in the music space, but I don't know where to start. What advice can you leave for that person to just start? I feel like people just don't never start.
I think exactly. And I think another thing is it's better to start at the bottom, learn
Mm,
everything. Like I was an assistant and it was a terrible job. You're getting yelled at, you're doing phone calls, you're doing things that are quote unquote maybe beneath you,
right.
but that's lays the foundation of everything you're going to do. And that makes you a better employer because you
Mm.
know what it's like to be talked to, how you can resent your boss if they
Soon as they leave the room, you're talking about them, right?
yeah, and it's like to get as much knowledge as possible. Like you hear of people who started, being from North Carolina. I remember the guy who was like the CEO of Food Lion. He started as a bagger and then moved up
Really?
through
I
the
didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. I mean this was I don't know if he still is. I don't, but I remember reading that story about him and that yeah, so starting at the ground level is a blessing and a gift and you're getting exposed to things that you need to have. You can't just build a rocket ship if you didn't go get your physics degree. You need
100%.
to have the information to get to that. And like if you're the VP of the record label and you've never worked in music before, you're going to make a ton of mistakes. And as you know, that's a problem. That's why
100%.
music's in the state it is now because you've got musicians, people who aren't musicians who've never played a note in their life to dictating what music should be.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit when I kind of consult with some of these record labels is because I've been both, that I
Yes.
get both sides of the story, right? I understand the leverage that the record labels, they're making an investment, right? So these record labels, it's a risk for them. They don't know if you're gonna pop or not, and
Yeah.
then vice versa. So I now that I'm older, I understand both sides from because I never think like when I was signed, I didn't think I understood the record labels at all. I'm like, oh, they just sharks out, they eat everybody. So just like, but when I understand the leverage that you have to present to a label to warrant what you're worth, you have to, you can't negotiate when you don't have nothing to negotiate with, right? So they assume all the risks. So
Yeah.
now when I see all of these artists just disgruntled with their record labels and they're like, oh, they taking money from me, I haven't made a penny. And then I'm like, but without the record label, would you really have got to the position you're in? So I kind of see both sides, but I think like I tell people now, the perfect example of the perfect record deal is a partnership. I bring half of the money and you bring half of the money. And there'd be a lot less artists if they had to put up half, right?
Yeah, no, for
So,
sure. And especially, back when you had your label, when you were signed, that's when everything was physical. It was
oh,
so expensive. Just the 2-inch tape was expensive, and then you ship into stores. Now we don't have to do any of that. Everything's digital. So the risk is less now for the labels, and
my
it's cheaper
fir-
to record a record,
my first studio session, I didn't never knew about ADAT tapes. And
Yeah.
this guy, they like, no, we're gonna take you to one of the world renowned engineers. And I showed up and the guy's like, where's your tape? I'm
Wow.
like, where's my tape? I use Pro Tools, sir.
Yeah.
He's like, did you not know you was coming to see me today? And I was like, they just booked the session, huh? I didn't know I had to come with tapes.
Wow.
He's like, well, I have tapes, but I charge $20 a tape. So if we're gonna
Yeah.
get something done, you need to buy some tape. And I'm like, oh. But once I heard my vocals on tape versus Pro Tools, it's just a warmer tone. It's just like, I'm a perfect person of like a little bit of the new and then some like a hybrid of the analog aspect of music because it's just something you can't get digitally sometimes.
I agree completely. And I'm a big fan of acoustic, real
Yes.
instruments. Like I wrote the string quartet score and I hired a string quartet for my record because I wanted
Really?
real cello, the
Oh.
violin, the viola. And yeah, you can't, a computer can't do it. Sorry, can't. Totally
See,
different.
I feel like that's the aspect of music that people are not going to that extent to give that experience, right? So, our studio here in Miami is one of the first studios built that's integrated the Dolby Atmos system for the spatial sound of music, right? So, we're trying to so we had an opening for people to come in and experience like hearing music like you hear stuff at the theater, and it
Nice.
just was mind blowing that I'm like, oh, this changes everything, the how we produce and how we mix and how we do everything. Where you can be sitting here and you can just hear the bells a little bit behind you, but then you can hear the strings of, and you really get that immersed thing with this. So this Dolby Atmos is going to be like the new wave. I see Apple and Spotify are pushing a lot of the artists who release music in the Dolby Atmos format to the top.
Wow. Yeah, maybe I should hire you to remix my record in that. Seriously. Because
Real
you're right.
talk.
Because yeah, because the digital world is not going anywhere. We're in
No.
the digital world, but you can keep it doesn't have to be all digital.
Yes.
You bring in the human aspect, bring in the real instruments, all of that analog, and make a nice baby with it. And
I'm
like,
so
yeah.
scared. Like I tell people, I'm so scared of where music is going because I feel like it's so fast, right? I feel like, and this could be me just sounding like the bitter old guy that it's not embracing the new generation's music. But it's like when I think about Michael Jackson's, the Whitney Houston's, these type artists that impact timeless records that it's like you can play them today and they still compete. I feel
Hmm.
like that's lacking in music. Like everything's so fast. Like
Yeah.
there are literally songs now on the radio that are a minute and 30 seconds long because it's fitting TikTok's formula. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, this is where we're going with music. Like I remember a record could be 7 minutes with an
Yes.
intro and a outro with just some breakdowns of the instruments. And some days is long, long going.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping like maybe the pendulum will swing back because a minute
Hopefully.
and a half, usually that's what happens. And I'm hopeful too because I feel the same. I feel like, am I just the wrong generation? I don't get it. It's like rock and roll's evil, but I agree with you because I feel like it's too digital. I feel it's too removed from the human experience because even back then, it was Elvis on stage. It was, they were real musicians and just being very creative, and like you're saying, the creativity is kind of
it's
shortened. It's cut
it's
off.
like everything's about speed. Like I found an artist online and I was like, yo, you're amazing. I loved your project. Where can I hear you perform? And she told me she's never performed before. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, I'm scared to be around people. I'm an introvert. I'm a
Yeah.
this. But when you hear this music, you're like, oh my goodness, it just takes you to a place. But I feel like that's where music is. Everybody has the ability to just make music at home and put it out immediately. So
Yeah.
you lose that, the era I'm from, it was a skill set, it was a grind involved with even getting signed, let alone actually putting an album out, right? So I went through 3 bad deals before the album actually came out. Like, so that's 6 years
Oh,
of not putting out music. So
totally. And then, yeah, but like you're saying, and you're becoming this musician, you're evolving through every process. Because I went through 3 producers
okay.
before I got to the right one. And same thing, I used to go to open mic nights, and there's not that many. I mean, I'm in Los Angeles now, but with COVID, everything,
Right.
people, it's been weird.
Yeah.
And same thing, I haven't performed in a long time. I would love to perform again. But I am launching my company now. So ideally, I like to do like some happy hours, sing some
Oh, that'd
songs,
be dope.
do my vodka because
Little intimate settings. That'd
yeah,
be
because I'm a
nice.
classical guitarist. I went to school. I'm classical,
Ah,
so I can even just do background music, or I can just do
right.
instrumentals of my songs without even
Oh, well,
singing.
that's the selling point right there. The show and then the tasting at the same time. So
Yes,
you
exactly.
have a leg up on all the other people trying to sell vodka that don't play an instrument.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah. And to answer your other question, so I'm on Greekazon.com and they will ship
Okay,
to 44 states. So
nice.
that was not a thing before the internet. Like if it wasn't in your state, you couldn't get it unless you traveled and,
Right.
did jump through a bunch of hoops. But now, like say Florida, you could order from them and they'll deliver it to you, no problem.
Well,
The
we
liquor.
definitely gonna put that link up so
Okay.
everybody can get it. What's some last words you can leave me? Leave me with a Tina mantra, something you live by every day when you wake up, you brush your teeth, and you say what?
This is one thing I actually have right next to where I walk into the bathroom. It's like you're not creating a business, you're creating yourself.
Mm,
And everything you do is these are vehicles on who you're being, who you're becoming, how you want to proceed in this world, because that's a question I have to ask myself. How do I want to be? How am I going to handle this situation? Am I going to be a diplomatic? Am I going to, yell at people? What kind of person am I going to be? And that's what I ask myself all the time, whether it be through the music, through the vodka, through my day job, or any experience. And because every day you have a new challenge every
yeah.
day, and you have to your consciousness needs to keep shifting, and to remind myself that I'm up leveling every time, and that when a challenge comes, instead of looking, oh no, why is this happening,
Yeah.
oh, this is an opportunity
Mm.
to be a better version of
Just that
myself.
mindset shift is all everybody needs.
It's all in the
Well,
mind. That's my song Magical Ones is about that. It's like, what, go inside and tap into your power and you'll know what to do.
I'm on it. That's gonna be my listening pleasure tonight.
Great.
So
Awesome.
I will definitely check that out. Tina, thank you. I appreciate you coming and shedding some positive energy through the screen and definitely even better vodka. I
Yes, thank you.
appreciate that. So this probably won't make it past the weekend, but thank you. I'll let them know where they can find all your social media. You on social media?
Oh
What's your
yeah, at Tina's Vodka everywhere.
perfect? So we'll do put all of that up. And you've been tuned
Awesome.
into another episode of the Everyday Game Changers podcast. Today's episode definitely was no different. She's changing the game for the women
Yes.
in the vodka business. Album on the way. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right.